You're listening to the Clutter Fairy Weekly, a weekly webcast and podcast brought to you by the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas. If you'd like to participate in one of our live webcasts, please visit cfhou.com/weekly. You'll find a calendar of upcoming webcasts, as well as instructions for joining the Zoom meeting via the app or by phone. We'd love to see you. That URL again is cfhou.com/weekly. Now here's the weekly episode. Enjoy.
Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for July 14th, 2026. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hello, everybody. Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your questions and comments via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via video or audio. And we're also streaming the webcast live on Facebook. So you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by talking about last week's weekly tittle, which was called Update Your Expectations. The assignment was to revisit a project on which you'd fallen short of your expectations. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook. Who revived a stalled project this week? Please let us know in the comments. YouTube viewer Carla Q3Y shared a comment on last week's video. Carla writes, I listened to Gayle talking about getting rid of furniture. We're empty nesters now, and to have a fresh start, we got rid of an oversized porch table, a big plant stand, a big useless end table in the living room, a round table in the office, an electric fireplace in the dining room, and a baker's rack in the kitchen. What a difference, and we love the space. I have the decluttering fever. The attic is next. Have a great day, everyone.
That was such a great, she's like cookie tossing the furniture and stuff is going out. And I love that because furniture has such a big footprint. And when you start removing pieces of furniture, you realize how not making a decision about the furniture has overcrowded your space. And she has totally gone out and said, yeah, I know this is a functional piece of furniture, but we don't need it. It does not enhance our space. We would rather have the open space. And she got rid of a lot of stuff. And that list was really extensive. And I think that it made a huge difference in the living room and the office and the dining room and she pulled excess out of a whole bunch of rooms. And I'm sure that was a, breath of fresh air in the space. So I love that project. Then she's like, here, it can go away. Somebody else can have this and it's out. And she's making it happen. So good for you. And congratulations on making such a big dent. And take that fever and go straight into that attic because you know that 99% of what's in that attic is going to go. You just stuffed it in the attic so you wouldn't have to look at it. So now it's really marinated and aged and you can go get it out of there and donate and never have to go in the attic again. So that's my goal. That's my goal for you.
Now, we talked last week about, you were talking last week about getting rid of furniture. I'm really curious, Carla. I don't think Carla's with us live, but if you're watching this week, Carla, give us a follow-up comment to let us know when you did all of that. I don't know if that was all stuff they did recently or if over what kind of time frame. I'd love to know.
Yeah, you just wondering about how long it took them to do it.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It was a lot. But you know what? Like, depending on how you dispose or what kind of, junk day you have, the junk pickup is the mechanism which allows you to put things at the curb without getting in trouble. And then if it's good stuff, somebody's going to come and take it well before the junk guys have to come and take it. And so, and you can pay for people to come and haul it off, and you can pay for donation pickup, and who knows how she got rid of it all. But I really like that she went through the effort to do it because I know that that many pieces was a big uncrowding of all of her spaces, and so I'm super proud of you for that. And good luck in the attic.
Yes. Jane in California reports it was a productive week. I went through all my jewelry and sold pieces I no longer wanted to an estate company. These were all pieces I had no desire to keep and netted $2,119.
Rock and
Definitely worth the
roll.
time. That is fantastic.
That is a payback for all the effort and the work, right? And you're totally right. If it wasn't your thing and you weren't going to wear it anyway, it didn't just need a molder there. And now it's going to go to somebody who has the mechanism and capacity to sell it. And the pieces are going to individually go to someone who actually wants to have them. And so what a great idea. Good job.
Jacqueline says, a few weeks ago, I talked about my collection of geocoins and wanting to downsize it to make it easier to display them and to
Oh,
enjoy
right,
them.
right, right.
They were collected through the
All the work
geocaching
she did. I mean,
fund,
all the
right?
hiking work she did.
She says, I already had several custom-made albums to put the coins into, but I had way more than fit into those albums.
Mm.
I did purchase a display case that hangs on the wall that has shelves and a glass front to display some of my favorites. I decided that whatever didn't fit into the albums or display case was going. I posted about 150 geocoins for sale.
Wow. That's a major movement on that collection. And I love that you had the containers and the display unit to save the cream of the crop for you. You know, the pieces that are the most important to you. And so you can have some on the wall and you can have your binders to save some. And then the rest can just be somebody else's collection at this point. Great, great, great. And you put them up for sale and there they are, and whatever happens at this point happens. And how great to I mean, I'm sure getting 150 coins up for sale was a lot of work. So I know that you put some time and effort into making it happen. Good for you. And I appreciate that you are right sizing that collection for where you are in your life now. Like collecting it all and making the collection get bigger and bigger while you were actively doing it was part of the fun, I'm sure, of doing the geocaching work, the hiking, the chasing down. And that was part of the fun. But now now it's a collection that you got and you don't need to keep the whole vast volume, and you're thinning it down to the representative sample that means something to you and that is a reflection of the fact that you spent a long time doing that kind of stuff for fun. And so I really feel like you're totally aiming to right size this collection and making it display in the house and reflect its value to you. Like you're showing that it really was an important part of your life, but you're not surrendering all that storage space to the full collection because you don't need the full collection to remember how much fun it was while you were doing it. So good job. And you got all the parameters happening, all the things that I would advise you to do, you're actually doing. And so I'm so happy for you.
It's great. Lee said, I had moved all of the paperwork to shred back to the garage. It was driving me crazy sitting in the living room.
Well, that's good. Except that you don't want it out there, forever. So if you
Right.
have a lot, maybe it's worth, loading it in the car and taking it to a shredding company, depending on where you live. Most commercial shredding companies that go around to businesses to take their truck to their business and shred a bunch of paper for a company have free days or drop off times where customers can come to their facility instead of the truck coming to you and allow you to drop off and shred a small amount for free or for pretty inexpensively. And so I would, do a little Googling around what shredding companies exist in your area and then go to their websites and see if they have a free day. And that way you can load them in the car, you can drive somewhere, and they will be shredded in a truck in 30 seconds. And you will not have to be dealing with it anymore. So, I say that because paper in boxes in the garage is sort of a humidity nightmare. It's just going to sit in there, especially over the summer, and suck in humid air. And so they're just going to get damp and, heavier. So maybe it's time to say that you don't want to spend all your free time shredding paper by hand. That's taking too long. And it would be better to spend your free time collecting that stuff, finding a commercial solution that allows you to drop it off for free or inexpensive and get it all handled in one hit. And so then you spend a couple of hours on an afternoon instead of the next 35 hours shredding everything by hand in your little home shredder. Better use of your time, and it solves the problem overnight.
Excellent. Brenda says, sold my wine fridge. Times change. New place has fewer electric outlets.
There you go. Just cut, a wine fridge is fun if you need to have a lot of wine to show people. But, wine can still go in the actual fridge, or it can be on racks and refrigerator when you're going to drink it. So you just got rid of that extra. I can have an entire fridge's worth of wine cold and ready to go when a spontaneous party erupts in my house.
And it's one more item that will not be quietly humming in your house.
In the background, yeah,
right?
Yeah. Good job.
Let's see. Let me see. So much stuff here. Pat says, was putting off a stack of papers. The papers are now spread out on the table, making it more visible to deal with. It is pre-sorted into individual piles to deal with. Sorted procrastination, she says. But the project is now moving.
That's good. That's, step one is sorting the paper. And then, the idea that you don't want to get stuck waiting for enough time to deal with it all. So I would focus on trying to get rid of one pile at a time, like spend an hour and deal with pile A, and then that's what you do today. And then come back another day and do pile B, and that's what you deal with that day. So I don't want you to get hung up waiting for the day when you have 6 hours to sit there and deal with it all. So do it in little pieces and keep knocking it out. You'll feel good about the fact that you're still working on it and it's still moving forward, even if it feels like it's moving forward slowly. But it also then won't stay there and wait to be handled as long.
Anya says, I decluttered with professional help yesterday to right size. As a reminder, Anya's moving from a house to from a larger space to a smaller space.
Yeah.
And she also said 2 more sessions at least coming up.
Awesome. Anya, that's great news. I'm so glad you got somebody coming to help you deal with that. That's fabulous. Let it go, let it go. You want the space in the new, you want the new space to feel comfortable and easy to maneuver and not overstuffed. So good job on doing this on the front end.
M reports, after the landlord had my furnace and air conditioner replaced and painted my balcony, I was trying to put everything back in place when a toad got loose in my apartment. I've spent the week devising traps and hunting. So far, no toad and no corpse.
Okay, well, I guess we could all relate to that. Something escaped in the house that wasn't supposed to be there. Yeah. It used to be that Frankie and Cookie would bring birds home and release them in my house.
Oh, that's always fun.
Twice Frankie brought bats home and released them into my house. So it was when he would get up on the roof and they would be flying around up there apparently, and he would leap and catch them in the air above the roof, and then he would bring the bat in the house to show me. And yeah, that was some fun.
Okay, one more because it's
y'all are chatting. Really, I can see everybody's talking like crazy.
Really relevant to last week's topic of expectations. CJ says, analyzed a couple big projects and how expectations didn't match reality in many ways. The ones mentioned, time, physical energy, mental energy, clarity of objectives, also a series of unexpected events, throwing all these factors off and not adjusting nearly enough for them. Working on reducing not only my expectations, but those of others involved, which is proving harder than even I anticipated.
Yeah. It's so. What's it's the armchair quarterback effect of other people managing, having opinions and advice about how you should manage your projects. I'm sure that they're participating with you and They're not going to actually do any of the work. They're still expecting you to do all the work, but they have opinions about how you should do it, which is like, yeah. I think that if you're not doing any of the work, your opinions sort of don't matter. You just have to wait on me. But good for you. Good for you for noticing. I'm proud of you that you're looking at them and you're paying attention to, like, I had a plan, but that plan really doesn't work anymore. Like, I have to revise the plan. And so you're changing your expectations and you're reporting those expectations to others and you're reporting the difficulties to others. And, good for you for keeping up with it. So the goal is you actually want to get the project done and you want to move it forward, and you just need to have a plan that is realistic for you to move it forward. And so there's no point in having a glorious and fabulous plan that no one can execute and you can never accomplish. It's better to have a plan that works for where you are and then actually allows you to move forward on the project. And so we're supporting you. Go team, go. I'm proud of you for looking at it and figuring it out.
Okay, I think we should move on to our main topic. That comment was actually a pretty good segue because
Right?
it's all about other people today.
Yeah.
If we're not careful, other people's gifts and cast off belongings can easily become our clutter problem. Friends, family members, and housemates may carelessly, unwittingly, or even aggressively sabotage our efforts to reduce clutter and organize our homes. Today, we're going to explore how setting firm and meaningful boundaries with other people can reduce the accumulation of clutter in our spaces.
Sometimes clutter that is associated with someone else and the guilt about releasing things and the nature of our relationships that we have with other people means that we take on other people's clutter in our space. We have enough trouble with the clutter we create in all the ways that we create it ourselves. We sure enough don't need to take on clutter that comes from someone else. But the flip side of other people's clutter is that it is someone else's problem, as long as you have some boundaries that prevent you receiving it into your home, or you have a way to jettison it back out again after you've received it. Here is how blurry relational boundaries complicate the organizing process. First, in terms of accumulation. Being a people pleaser drives you to accept gifts that you don't want. This happens because you don't want to say no if they're offering it to you because it feels like they're trying to be nice. Well, maybe they are trying to be nice to you, but it disguises the fact that they don't want it. They can't make a decision to donate it, and they're giving it to you because it passes the problem to you. They're literally throwing you their hot potato of clutter just to get it out of their face and resolve their clutter issue. Remember, they see their stuff as still being useful and having value, so they're trying to enrich you by bringing it to you, but if you can't use it just like they can't use it, then it's just a clutter handoff and you're left holding the bag. Things inherited from those who've passed away brings a whole new level of guilt into the game of clutter disposal. Somehow, because the items come from someone who's passed, it enshrines all of their stuff with the added value of it's all her stuff. It was all mom's stuff. It was all grandpa's stuff. That ramps up the guilt trip to hold on to inherited hand-me-downs. There will always be things that are indeed valuable that you inherit. Maybe there's jewelry, maybe there's collections, maybe there's furniture that has value. But the majority of the inherited items are just stuff that lived at someone else's house. The extra burden of guilt about releasing the inherited things is an emotional barrier that complicates the practical handling of other people's stuff. If you're lucky enough to have a large home and manage to keep it in good enough shape that you have some open or free spaces in your home, you'll likely get tapped sometime to store something in the garage or the attic or the guest room. You agree to store items in your home for someone else. Let me tell you, there is nothing like free rent to make it impossible for that person to ever agree to retrieve those items again. Retrieval means paying for a storage unit going forward or facing the clutter and going through it. Neither of those payments ever seems a good idea to someone who's using your home for free. So there's absolutely no incentive on their end to ever face the project and remove it from your space. Then we have shared space encroachment. So, a lack of physical boundaries allows family members or roommates' belongings to spill into shared areas. So, in the common areas where you're all trying to use the room at the same times for different things. When everybody's things merge in communal zones, nobody really takes ownership of the mess. And roommates, whether they're spouses or family members or actual roommates, they blame each other for the messes too, pointing to the things that are other people's stuff as the clutter in the shared space, rarely noticing their own things that are also in space. I have negotiated that argument so many times where two people will be standing there pointing to different piles in the room and saying, that's the clutter. And all they're really saying is, that's the stuff that's not mine. Therefore,
Right.
it's the clutter. It's like, no, that's her stuff. That's your stuff. Y'all both have stuff in here. Everybody's entitled to have stuff in here, but you have to agree about how you're going to store, manage, contain, clear up, live with that stuff where you have to share the room. There is a boundary about other people's clutter where you can't easily declutter items that you don't own. If it's not your stuff, you can't you can't go in there and just randomly start throwing out your husband's stuff, right? So if others resist purging their own things, you're left cleaning around their clutter, and that leads to resentment and you being really frustrated, having living in a really frustrating environment. This issue affects lots of couples where they don't have similar reactions to clutter, and one finds that the other's tolerance levels are too high. And so I've talked about this a lot where, you know, two people living in the same house, one has a higher threshold for chaos than the other. And so if one left to their own devices, one person might let the house get really, really out of control before it bothers them and triggers them to start changing, dealing with it. And the other person that has a lower threshold for the chaos, then always responds earlier and freaks out earlier. And it's a constant argument because this person hasn't gotten triggered yet and this person's triggered all the time. And so the inclination is to try, as that person that gets triggered quicker, to try to manage, deal with, filter somebody else's stuff to make it work. Except that you really, it's a boundary that you can't. I mean, you can, but you're going to pay for it later. You can't get in somebody else's stuff and start making decisions for them any more than you would like somebody else to come and deal with your stuff and make decisions for you about it. And so it's something that I preach and have very strongly for a long time about. You cannot make keep toss decisions about someone else's stuff unless they've given you permission, unless you're very clear about the boundaries. And even then, you're going to end up throwing out something or making a decision about something that you didn't understand why it was important, and it looked one way to you and it was actually there for another reason, which is why I spend all my time saying, is this staying or going? I think it looks like a piece of trash, but I ask the question no matter what it is, because sometimes the answer is, oh, we need to keep that because fill in the blank. And I would have, 30 minutes ago, it would have been in the trash can. So you cannot choose for somebody else because you don't know why. It may not be sitting there for the physicalness of what it actually is. It may be sitting there as a representation of something else, or a reminder of something else, or have a piece of data or reference point that is part of that item. Like, you just have no idea what's attached to it. So you can't. And that means that you are living with somebody who you have to get involved in decluttering the house with you. And sometimes people are not always on board. And so it's a problem. It's a problem to manage together. This is a good stopping point if there's anything you want me to cover before I pivot.
Um, no, I think
Okay.
let's go on. Yeah.
So given the issues
Wait,
that,
did you cover that last? You covered that last point?
mm-hmm,
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry.
mm-hmm.
Okay, go on.
Uh,
I
I did
lost my
not.
place.
You're
Okay.
not. No,
Okay.
no, no.
Okay.
You're
Did
right.
not
I'm
lose
so
my
sorry.
place.
So
Thank you.
one other piece of coverage. Sorry. Sorry. I thought I did. Decision paralysis is a problem because decisions on how to handle clutter trigger several responses and reactions that are emotional and overwhelming, like guilt over discarding a gift or panic about how to organize what remains. And it becomes mentally exhausting to figure out what to keep and donate and discard. So, as part of this process of, uh, you know, dealing with other people's stuff, if you're looking at other people's stuff, trying to make decisions about it, which, I recommend that you don't try to do, you can end up, even as a team, trying to make decisions about how to handle stuff. And it creates really overwhelming emotions about what kind of choices you need to make. And one of those things might, for instance, if you got a gift from somebody and you're trying to decide what to do with the gift, it feels like it's somebody else's stuff because they gave it to you. And so then your response to it changes. The guilt that you feel around releasing it changes because it came from someone else instead of you bought it yourself. And so there's a little extra, goose of guilt there that goes with trying to manage things that came from someone else. And now you're trying to make a decision about how to deal with it.
Jane says this applies so much to the jewelry I sold. Much,
Oh,
much,
right.
much was from my mom and gifts. Keeping favorites and passing along the others feels great.
Good. That's good feedback. And it is, that's the nature of jewelry. A lot of it too is, especially if it's valuable or important pieces, then it's something that's been passed down and passed down. And so it has an accumulated, I inherited it from mom thing. I inherited it from my grandma thing that makes it a little bit harder to release. But I'm proud of you. You faced it and said, okay, I inherited all this stuff. And yes, it may be valuable. And yes, it came from my mom, but these are the things that I would actually wear in my life. And the rest of these things can go and make other people happy. And so good job for you for doing that. Yes.
There, one more comment I wanted to share.
Okay.
Sorry, I've got to find it again. Brenda says, my move brought friends' storage to an end.
There
I
you
remember
go.
talking, Brenda telling us about her situation. She says, offered to downsize on video call, but it was goodbye to friendship since high school. Guess I served my purpose.
Oh my
So yeah, the
God.
friend who had been storing stuff for years did not react well to being told that it needs to go.
And see, that just says to me that your friend was being super selfish about. They wanted the free accommodation of your house as the storage unit without having to deal with the problem or manage it themselves. And they were annoyed that you made them do something. And this is part of the, like I said in the beginning, this is part of why storing something for someone else becomes such a problem because you absolutely are doing something to make their life easier at no cost to them. And them getting annoyed about you making them deal with it and come up with a solution that doesn't involve your home is perfectly reasonable. It's a perfectly reasonable thing for you to do. And for them to react so badly instead of being grateful for the 20 years that they didn't have to deal with it for free is like, oh my gosh, that's like super annoying. So, well, sorry that they were that shallow and awful. And you, and it just shows you like they so badly didn't want to have to deal with it that they got mad and blamed you for making them do it. It's like, hey, I'm moving. Like, what do you want me to do here? And
Yeah.
I will say that you don't want to wait until you have to move because many of you are not planning to move. And so that means that you're just the permanent storage unit. And like, no, the end.
Okay, let's go on.
Given the issues that other people's clutter create, what can you do about it? And that's what we're discussing next. We've got some ideas to share to help you process the collections of other people's clutter hiding at your house. So the first one I think is the most important one. We have to block the incoming stream. You do not have to accept what others want to give you. They're desperately hoping to pass their clutter issue to you, but you do not have to receive it just because they're desperate. While the temptation is always to accept free stuff, In this instance, the free stuff is creating a larger burden than it is gifting you something. Practice radical refusal instead. Tell anyone who offers you something that you've got plenty of your own stuff and you're really not the best person to receive their gifts. Tell them someone else will need these things more. You will want to agree to take it to be polite. And you'll tell yourself that you'll just donate it yourself. But there's two problems with that solution. Once you accept from them, they will see you as their new pipeline, and they will come back to you again and again as the easy solution to dump their stuff. Second, if you accept with a plan to donate it for them to stay polite, then you've just created a task for yourself, essentially an errand that you have to run on their behalf. And since they'll be back again and again, you're creating a non-stop errand that you have to handle for them forever. That's not the situation you want to be in long term. It's better to not accept anything from them, which forces them to run their own donation errand and stops them turning to you to take things off their hands. I think this is super important to recognize. It's lovely and that they're thinking of you and offering you stuff. And I do offer things occasionally to my friends where I receive something from a client and I think my friend might really find that useful, or I know somebody that might want that. And I do occasionally send a picture to somebody and go, are you interested? But I take no offense in them saying no, thank you. I just create the option. And then if one of them gets diverted to somebody that needs something, great. And otherwise, I'm taking it all as a donation anyway, so it doesn't slow me down. But I think in general, you don't want to put yourself in the situation of you have now just become the easy venue for someone else to hand things off so they don't have, I mean, it's ultimately, this is the easiest thing for them to do so they don't have to deal with it. And you don't want to be that person. You want them to back up and think about a reasonable donation mechanism for them that does not involve translating it all to relatives or friends of them. And so, yes, radical refusal is what I'm saying. Just no. Now, I know that there may be moments where what they offer to you is actually something that you want and that it would really be useful. But I think you have to, just like being at the store and buying something that looks cool and clever, I think you have to go, am I really going to be vastly enriched by this? Instead of, it might be a good idea. And, you know, as soon as you say yes once, they'll be back to you. So, you know, pay attention and make sure it's worth that risk that because once you take one thing, then they're going to come at you hard after that. And you're going to have to work really hard to refuse it all again. So I would just, you don't need to know what they have. You don't need to shop at their store. You just need to let it go. Okay. All right.
Connie says, in my case, it was stuff I inherited whereby they told me it was valuable art, and so I feel an obligation to pass it on to other family members and or see it get sold for its value.
I understand that. I understand that idea.
Yeah.
I do. I understand why you feel trapped by that.
Well,
But I would,
sometimes the stuff comes with strings.
right. Well, you know, monetary strings that feel important.
Well, or strings of and in this case, it's their expectations. You know, it came down to Connie from someone who passed on expectations that went with it.
Right. And here's the thing, you know, this is just like they think the china is valuable. They think the art is valuable, but you don't know that it actually is. They believe that it is. And the only way to prove that is for you to do a bunch of research and find out, because there's no blanket solution to that. Every artist, every different piece of artwork may or may not have a value in this market today, in this moment. So what they pay for back in the day really doesn't matter. It's what it's valued at right now. And that's going to differ artist to artist and painting to painting. Like, this artist is really collectible, but this artwork that he did in gray tones is not not popular right now. So, I mean, there's all kinds of caveats around what makes something valuable in the moment. And so I think that to solve the problem quickly, you have to take the artwork and let it be appraised somewhere by somebody that knows what they're doing, because you clearly don't. We don't understand the art world sufficiently to set a value for something. And so if you think it has some kind of value, then find an appraiser who can look at it and tell you. Go to a museum and get a recommendation from a museum about who does appraisals that would be appropriate for what you've got, and let somebody look at the collection and tell you what it is. And then if it is valuable, then they're the person that are going to point you to a way to sell it. And if it's not valuable, they can release you from that expectation that it's worth a lot of money. And then you can just go about donating it away. Now, these kinds of things, you can also put them into resale stores that sell artwork and let the resale store figure out what kind of value to put it on it. Or you can donate them to auctions, for instance, where somebody is having an auction to raise money, and they do all kinds of silent auctions and online auctions and live auctions at events, charity events to raise money. And so sometimes you can dispose of a few of them that way, to put them in an auction and let people bid on them and raise money for an event. But I think ultimately, depending on how many pieces you have and whether they're actually valuable or not, you have to start with appraisal. And that appraisal is going to set everybody's expectations and shoot down any misinformation, right? Like if the family's sure that these are worth a lot of money, and maybe maybe they really aren't. And so you gotta get from that starting point first, and then move on.
Well, and Naomi added, I have had the experience of having a painting assessed at $8,000, but by the time it came to an actual art dealer, he basically said it was unsaleable.
Oh my goodness.
So
Well, yeah.
yeah.
There's that too, because the appraisal is for insurance values and that kind of stuff. And so I think you definitely have to we have to weigh the value of how much work you want to do versus what the potential recovery is there. And, maybe you've got 15 pieces and one of them is really valuable, but the only way you're going to know that is if you put it in front of somebody who knows what they're looking at. And so, sorry, it's going to be some work. Or you can declare that it's too much of a hassle. It's not worth your time. And that, if somebody else wants to get the money out of it, then they're welcome to take the paintings from you. Like if another relative is insistent that it's all worth money, then it's like, you can come and take these paintings and go do with it what you will. And you can move the problem to them. I mean, you can absolutely refuse to be the person that's in charge of disposing of them and let somebody else realize the value. And they can take them and have them. Like, thank you so much.
Okay, let's go on.
Okay. Another way to cope is you have to close your in-home storage unit.
As Brenda did.
As Brenda did. Former roommates and adult children may leave behind their belongings, turning your space into a holding zone for their past. If it wasn't good enough to take with them when they left the house, it's not likely that important to them now. If they actually left behind valuables that they don't want to store in their current space, maybe a huge collection of baseball cards or their prom dresses they're too sentimental to release, it's not your job to give them a no thought, no cost way to make no decisions and take no responsibility. As adults, it's reasonable they manage their own stuff. And it's also reasonable that your house is not their solution. It's your space, so give them the responsibility of their own stuff. Send photos, ask for disposition, tell them that you need the space for your own things, which is true no matter if you have something to put there in the moment or not. Tell them to respond with a plan or you will handle it yourself, and mean it. Again, nobody wants to give up their free, no thought storage unit where they don't have to think about it. It's just there and they just know in the back of their mind, oh, that's at mom's house. Nobody wants to have to deal with that. But you can force the issue and not wait until you're moving to force the issue. It doesn't have to be have your adult kids been out of the house for a decade? Then it's time for them to come to their high school bedroom and get the rest of the stuff out of there. Or, you tell them that you'll do it for them. And you can send them photographs of what you're going through, and they can say, I'm okay with that. Like, they left it behind in the moment because it was moving day for them, and they were young, and they did not thoroughly manage their belongings, and they pulled the cream of the crop out and took it with them and left all the other stuff behind because they didn't want to deal with it. And so it's a project that they are storing in your house because they can ignore it and do nothing there. And I think that, you can declare that enough time has passed that they need to deal with it, or you will deal with it, or they're forfeiting it and you are dealing with it by default. And so go through. And, as a person that has lived, like somebody that lived with you, you know them pretty well. And when you go through this stuff that's been in their old bedroom for a decade, you're going to go through and go, yeah, here's 15 trophies from when you were on the soccer team. I'm pretty sure you don't care about those anymore, right? And they can go, yeah, I don't care about them. And you can deal with them. Like, there's all kinds of things. Like, here's the clothes that they left behind because, they weren't willing to filter all their clothes, but they're clearly not wearing that pair of shorts anymore. They're clearly not wearing that t-shirt anymore. And they haven't needed it for the last 10 years. And so you can go in and go, okay, it's time to donate all these clothes. They don't need to live here until you are willing to come and look at it again. So I think this is an instance where it is other people's stuff, but it's in essence been abandoned at your house. And the longer it's been there without attention, and the longer that they have refused to look at it, despite repeated, requests for them to deal with it. Overtures, yes. I think that gives you the right to say, okay, it is now my house. It's now stuff in my house that you're not dealing with. Therefore, I am going to deal with it for you. And I will send you pictures of what I'm doing, but I'm clearing this room. And we will, I'm forcing your opinions and decision making about this. And if somebody freaks out about it, then you're like, okay, then you need to get over here and we need to go through this together. It will create an uproar. You are disrupting the status quo. You are fixing you're rustling around in there. I don't want to think about this. I don't want to deal with this zone. And they're going to be annoyed by that. But it is still your house, and you do not have to be the long-term storage solution for even people that you birthed. Right?
Let me share a comment from Maureen, who's with us on Facebook. She says, these storage stories at others' homes remind me how after I was married, my parents repeatedly told me to get my belongings out of their basement.
Right?
The day after my dad retired, he called me at work and said he put something for me in our backyard. It was my wedding dress.
Oh.
Fortunately in a box.
In a
Lesson
box.
learned.
Right? But and the thing about it is, your dad shouldn't have had to deal with that. He shouldn't have had to bring that to you. but okay. And he like reached his limit, right? He's like, okay, well, I'm clearing out. This box is huge. I'm never doing anything with this wedding dress. It needs to go. And sure enough. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, let's go on.
Okay, we also have to talk about clutter in shared spaces. Everybody in the household and guests contribute to visual clutter simply by dropping their bags, their mail, their shoes in shared active use spaces rather than putting them away. And so it's time for conversations about guidelines to manage shared spaces. Generally, we're all grown-ups. We're all in charge of ourselves. And yeah, if you lived alone, you would leave the shoes there in the living room and not think a thing about it. But if that's making somebody else crazy and it's not how they want it to be, then you guys have to negotiate about what's okay. And so maybe it's that you can take your shoes off, but when you go to bed, you have to pick up the shoes and take them with you then, or something along that line. Like, I think it's not unreasonable for everybody that is sharing space. Everybody has their own rooms and they can do what they want in their own rooms, right? But in the shared common areas, We have to have agreements about what's okay in there and what isn't. And it can't be that the person that's the most twitched about the clutter gets it all their way. That's not an okay. You can't swing that way. But you have to collectively manage what's acceptable and what isn't. And so I think people don't generally have conversations around this. They have expectations around it. They expect that you won't leave your shoes in the living room, but nobody talks about it. They just get mad when the shoes are there. And so I think there's all kinds of examples of that. We're in the shared space. We're all contributing. Two, three, five of us are all contributing to the chaos in this living room. And everybody has to agree how much is acceptable and what can be done. And so having a conversation and saying, this makes me insanely crazy when I am walking through this room and I'm tripping over shoes everywhere. If that's something that really bothers you, then having a conversation about it and negotiating a solution. Okay, you can take your shoes off here, but put them all over in this corner, or they can be there for the evening and then they have to go back to your bedroom. And if they don't go, I will toss them into your bedroom. And so, make some conversations around what's the stuff that bothers you and what's the stuff that you want to be able to do, and can we negotiate around it? And know that in this situation, no one is going to get it exactly the way that they want it, because there's more than one person involved. And so it is going to be a compromise for everybody. Everybody's going to be slightly annoyed, but at least you can come to some common ground that works for everybody generally. And I think it's important to have those conversations instead of living with the expectation of, I want it to be total chaos here. I want it to be totally clean here. And everybody just gets mad that they don't get their own way. Because this will happen until you're dead. Your response to this room is going to happen for as long as you live in it. So you can either figure out a compromise now, or you can be angry for the next 20 years, which is better. That's my point.
Jacqueline says, I put a big basket in the living room to contain my partner's shoes. He can still find them and they are no longer everywhere.
Right? Even just having it be in a basket, like I'm sure they're just all tossed in the basket, but at least it's purposeful, right? Like that's the shoe basket. And so they're not spread out. You're not walking over them, which, I think people discount shoes on the floor as a trip hazard. They really are. And you can catch them and go flying. And so good compromise. I'm proud of you. And I appreciate that he is throwing his shoes in there, and that's his version of compromising. And so good for you guys to work it out.
Connie says, there were times I would dump the stuff DH left on my cleared space on his bedside. Not nice, I know, but it worked, sort of.
Well, it did force him to cope with it, right? And nobody wants to deal with the stuff when somebody else wants them to deal with it.
Right.
But it is part of being in a collective household that, sure, if you don't want to deal with this, that's great, but it's not staying here. I'm going to put it in a box and put it over there. Like, okay. Like, you can either deal with it, you can figure out a way where you're willing to deal with it and not impact me, or you can deal with my dealing with it without throwing it away. And this is how I'm not going to throw it away and not have it be in my space. So, yeah. Now, that's a solution that works for two people. It probably is not a solution that works with five people in the house. Like you just end up with millions of little boxes everywhere full of stuff that you've relocated for people. So probably not a good, multiple person solution. Okay. So the last one I'm going to talk about is UFOs. So crafty people, handy people, if you are into handyman projects, if you're doing
do it yourselfers.
Yeah, that's the better word. Do it yourself for projects. Any kind of somebody like that's doing a project, right? Maybe you're doing the photo sorting project and you've started it and it's all laid out somewhere. We, as people who are working on these projects, we sometimes leave them half finished out and about in a shared space, all spread out somewhere, because you can't do it all in one sitting, because it's not designed to get done in an hour. And so it does create a visual problem that other people have to live with and deal with in shared spaces. And so any kind of a UFO, it's really best to negotiate a solution that works out for everybody. So designate a space where UFOs are allowed to be out. Like you're doing a craft project on this end of the dining table. You're doing a DIY project in this corner of the room. You're building this cabinet. You're painting this thing. You're rewiring the lamp. Whatever it is that you're doing, right? So you designate a space where it's allowed to be, and have some boundaries. Like you're working on this sheet. You're working on this table. There's one space where it can be, and then set a deadline, a boundary around the deadline about how long it can be there. So it can be a UFO on the blanket, on the table, in the corner for a week or 2 weekends or whatever you want to designate. But it can't be there infinitely. And this is what happens with craft people or DIY people. We start a project, we don't always finish it. And so we do not want a permanent in progress UFO sitting on the floor or on the table somewhere for the next 3 years. So it needs to have, we commonly agree that UFOs can be done here. Like you can be working on this project here, but you can only be doing it for a week, or it can be there for 2 weeks, or it can be there for 3 weeks or whatever. And then we have to declare it not important enough to finish right now and pack it up. It has to be packed up and put away until you're ready to actually work on it again. And so I would think that that's a reasonable compromise between, I'm going to try to repaint this piece of furniture. I'm going to refinish this thing in the garage. I'm going to, people do refinishing out in the garage and they take over a whole parking space with whatever the project is. And so, you don't want to be out of your parking space for 7 months. You don't want to have the whole dining table be unusable every time you sit down to dinner because a corner of half of the table is covered with the craft project. So I would say, designate a space, designate a boundary of time, a deadline by which it has to be picked up. And regardless of whether it's finished or not, if it's still sitting there 2 weeks from now, that means you don't really have time to work on it because it's not getting done, or you don't want to work on it because it's not getting done. And therefore it's okay. It's acceptable to pack it up and store it until somebody's ready to go to it again. If you're not going to finish the lamp and the deadline has come and passed, it's time to take the lamp and its parts and put it in a box and go put it somewhere else so it's not in the middle of your floor. And I think that that's healthy management of a project in progress in the middle of a household with more than one person. Like if you want to surrender your dining room as the permanent craft area that's always got something on it and you live alone, that's cool. It's your space. But if you're sharing the space, then I think you have to have agreements about how those UFOs land, where they live, how long they stay, and what happens when they overstay their welcome. And discuss that in advance, like make that as a collective household decision. And then enforce it for your crafty stuff and their DIY projects, right? I mean, I'm thinking in my head, husband and wife, but it could be any two people. One of them does the one thing, one of them does the other thing. So there you go.
Suzanne has a comment that I'd like you to talk about.
Okay.
She says, it seems to really be true that it is easier to get through to another person in the same home if we take charge of our own clutter slash stuff slash organization first, but also to do the same for household items. They have nothing left to say, such as, what about your bedroom? Or what about your choose one item?
I think that what about your fill in the blank is a long-standing defense from
It's right.
don't challenge me because you have your own dirty
It's
house.
defensiveness, right?
Yes. And I think that is a go-to response for people that don't want to be poked. They don't want to do it. That it's not a project that they care about. It's not something that bothers them, or they have it in mind that that it should be done, or they need to do it, but they don't want to actually give the time to it. It annoys them. And so I think, that is that's a perfectly reasonable response to, yeah, that's not a good enough defense. You don't get to say, but what about your stuff? And truthfully, I have heard so many stories about nobody's doing anything and one person starts organizing their own stuff and not touching anybody else's stuff. They're only working on their own stuff. They're working on their stuff in the bedroom. They're working on their stuff in the office. They're working on their stuff in the kitchen, et cetera, et cetera. They focus on their stuff. And the fact that they're doing things and clearing spaces and getting things in motion and donating things out the door then triggers the other person to start doing it too. And I don't know if it's the movement of the energy or the lead by example or what exactly is happening, but a lot of times people respond to the other person's over there dealing with their own clothes in the closet, and that makes the other person come and do the same. Or they go in and start, messing with the files that are theirs in the office, and that makes the other person do it too. Like I have heard lots of stories about decluttering by osmosis, just from,
Right.
you're leading by example and the other person picks up the baton and starts doing it too. And then both of you guys are moving and lots of changes are happening and lots of good reinforcement comes from that. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's a very good point. Like just go work on your own stuff. And sometimes that it takes away the defensive, but what about your own piles?
Yeah.
And how come you're not working on your own stuff instead of bitching at me? And then they have to come up with another reason why they're doing nothing. So at least pushes them down the line of excuses, right?
Right. Well,
Good
and I think
point.
it's also important if the person who, doesn't do so well on keeping up with their own stuff, when they do something that is a positive change, be sure to acknowledge it.
Yes, yes,
Give them
100%.
give them credit.
Cheer for them and tell them thank you so much and I really appreciate that and you've done such a good job and like yeah, you got to be a Clutter Fairy cheerleader for them when they do something that you feel good about. You have to acknowledge that and not go and what about that other stuff over there. Like you have to take the pause and the win for the things that they deal with in that moment, or else you diminish their work and you diminish their focus. And it's super important to be reinforcing around that. 100%.
Okay,
Absolutely.
we are out of time.
Ooh.
I want to remind our audience we'll be back for our next live webcast next week, Tuesday, July 21st at the usual time. We're going to talk about alternatives to buying. Uh, the title of this one is How to Shop for the House That Has Everything, Buying Alternatives. So we're going to talk about, how to address when you've reached the point
You
where
shopped enough,
you have everything you need, but you still like to shop.
right?
So watch your email for an announcement. Gayle, why don't you give us the title?
This week's weekly title is Setting Boundaries on Other People's Stuff, as you would expect. This week's assignment is to set a boundary to address an item of other people's stuff in your space. Identify an item of other people's stuff in your home that bothers you. The item might be an unwanted gift, something you're storing or saving for a family member, a hand-me-down, an item you share with family that hasn't been returned to its rightful place, an item in a common space that belongs to someone else in your household, or anything else that triggers negative feelings. Reflect on why the item is where it is. What behavior, yours or somebody else's, resulted in the item's presence in this space. And consider what kind of boundary you might have set to prevent this item from ending up as your clutter. What boundary could you set going forward to stop the accumulation of similar items? Remove the item in question by disposal, donation, regifting, returning it to its previous owner, or putting it in its rightful place elsewhere in your home. If the troubling item belongs to someone else in your household, then plan a conversation to discuss the boundary you'd like to set and the cooperation or participation you'd like to request from the other person. And then come back and tell us how it went because you always want to hear the reports. I think everybody has something like this in there somewhere in their house, and now's the time to go get it out and return it.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through the website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
when the website's working,
Right.
which it hasn't been, but we're striving to make it be working. So, what's the status of it as today, Ed?
Oh, it is. It is.
It's back
I think we're
today.
good to go. Yes, I think we have solved the problem.
It was
Knock wood.
offline, then it was online, and then it was, migrated. And now, Ed has been working like a dog to get our website back together again. And so, thankfully he's doing his thing and we think you're okay. But if anybody
Yes.
notices any problems, please tell us. We don't
Yeah.
always realize right away. So,
Drop me an email at ed@clutterfairyhouston.com.
yes. Because if you send it to me, I'm just going to send it to him because I don't
Right.
know how to fix it. But thank you. Thank you for monitoring our site and emails if there's anything that you need to report to us about it. Thanks you guys for joining us this week. We appreciate it. We hope that you found this discussion valuable. I am a big advocate of you do not have to store other people's stuff just because they want you to. So I hope that you guys get inspired to move some things around and redistribute some things and then come and tell me some stories because I'd love to hear it. All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.